Francis.
And I'm Lenny Kluge.
We're two immigrants living in Chile talking about Chilean news, cultural events, travel, business, and more.
If you want to support our podcast, check out our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Chile Today Podcast. That's one word. www.patreon.com/The Chile Today Podcast.
What?
Just looking at a picture of my dad with his granddaughter next to
Aren't we supposed to be recording a podcast right now?
Yeah, well, I don't care. Next to my brother-in-law.
You heard it here first,
so
audience.
Oh,
he
this
doesn't
is so
care.
cute.
Let me see. Give me the phone.
No,
Let me see.
Here. Oh, let's see. Let me see.
I'm glad this is a visual medium, so everybody can see what we're seeing.
I'm just glad I'm recording.
Yeah. Okay.
That is cute.
I mean, sure. It's a kid. In a person.
It's my family.
Oh,
Fine.
so that's cute. Anyway, how have you been, Lenny?
Hey, I've been good. How you've been?
Yeah, it was a rough week for me, but
Yeah?
just a lot of things going
Wanna
on.
share?
Nah, not really.
Okay, fine.
But it was one of them's weeks. Lots of stuff to do, lots of stuff going on. But I'm good. I'm ready to start my new week optimistically with all of you listeners. But your week was fine?
Yeah, my week was rather uneventful.
Rather uneventful?
Yeah, business been tanking. No, not tanking, but like...
You mean your soda business?
Yeah, it's just like really not that much more to sell. We're still waiting for the new shipment to arrive.
Just
and
like twiddling your thumbs in the meantime.
Yeah, I hate this, really. I need something to do. So, thank God I'm here.
Yeah, you have the podcast.
Because I'm going to talk about trains, people, whether you like it or not.
For a long time. We're not even doing news today. So if you came here for news, check out our last podcast because it was just about news.
Yeah. It's going to be so much news piling up for the next time. I think we have to adopt a new format.
Do another news episode next. It's just, there's a lot going on with the Constitution. We are going to cover the Constitution, so keep your ears perked up.
Yes, sir.
Your eyes out for when we post our episode about the Constitutional Convention. They have deleted some, not deleted, but they consolidated some of the things, so it doesn't bother you as much. How many do we have now? 257?
It's like 300, 300 something, 50, something around that. I think
they
cut out like 140, 150.
Yeah, a few of them. Not cut them out, but like I said, consolidated.
Like human rights?
No,
Screw that.
Take it out. We don't need it. But we'll keep you updated on that. So in the meantime, make sure you are, if you're interested, joining us on our Patreon. Because on the Patreon, you can have a lot of different benefits depending on your kind of desires. At our $5 level, you can get travel tips, which could be like different restaurants, or it could be like how to actually tip in Chile, or different aspects. I don't know what else. How to take
about things to talk about at the dinner table.
Yeah, don't talk about this. Avoid these conversations. The cultural things, some of our favorite brunch spots. So all of those tips are there. Also, discount event tickets, free beer at some events. Lots of different cool things going on at the $5 level, $10 level. You get some free merch and access to our Discord, where you can talk to other people who and us directly about whatever you want to talk to us about.
Eager and waiting for your input.
Eager and waiting.
Yeah.
So consider joining us on Patreon.
And if you come to a Chistolas event and you want to cash in your free beer, just come talk to us.
Yeah,
or to any of the Chistolas, because that free beer is not going to serve itself.
Yeah,
you gotta let a person know.
Depends on the event. Some events you get free beer. Some events you get like not free money, but like discounts that you can then buy a free beer, right?
Where are my dollar bills?
Really, Patreon pays for itself, so get on there, support us, also help us buy more equipment. But anyway, so moving on, speaking of things you can get discounts on, these following things are events that you could potentially get discounts on or free stuff.
Yes, sir. Like starting with a horrible movie night. Which you will not get a discount on because it's for free anyway.
It's free, but you will get a free beer if you're a patron.
True that. Just, come talk to us if you want the beer. It's on June 16th at the Black Rock Pub.
This week.
So this week, actually, yes, this week. Mm-hmm. Next week as of this recording, but yes, that kind of threw me a curveball there for a second.
Yeah.
The next one would be what?
Well, I just wanted to say real quick, the horrible movie night, we're watching Mystery Men. And it's one of my favorite movies to hate and also love. So if you like that movie, or if you just want to like hang out, meet new people, laugh, and something really casual where you don't have to be center of attention or anything, like if you're more introverted or something, it's a really good way to just like put your toes in the water.
That's what I'm for.
Yeah, put your toes in the water of a little bit of things going on. So here we go. Next event is the pub quiz, which is the 18th.
Correct.
Like we've said, you guys get the first news of the pub quiz. It sells out really quickly, so if you're interested, make a reservation through us or through the Chistolas. If you're a patron, you get a discount on that. You can have a team of up to 4 people. There's rounds in English and Spanish. It's super fun, super accessible, no matter what your language level. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So we have more info on that on our Instagram or the Instagram of the Chistolas.
Yes, reserve your table now.
Reserve your table now. Message us, email us, or the message or email the Chistolas because that stuff sells out fast. But there are still tables available at this moment.
All right. And then a little bit further down the road, we got another show coming up on July 2nd.
Comedy show.
Comedy
Bilingual
show,
stand-up
yes.
comedy show. I'm going to be performing in this one.
You are.
I know it's been a while. It's like been
It
since
actually
before the
has been.
pandemic. Yeah, that I've been able to perform.
Really?
Yeah, since before the pandemic.
No shit.
Yeah,
How come?
look at me.
Yeah, I'm looking at you. Literally, I'm
Literally
looking at you.
me.
I'm looking at you right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to be telling stand-up jokes in English, and then other people are going to be doing them in Spanish. Are you performing?
No, not this time. I actually performed last time.
Okay, cool. So, that's gonna. When is that?
That
I
will
should
be
know, right?
on. Yeah, you should know if you perform. Yeah, it's on July 2nd. This time we're gonna do it at the Black Rock Pub because we like to switch up venues once in a while. So this month is gonna be
everything we've mentioned
Black
so
Rock
far
Pub
has been
all
at the
over.
Black Rock
Yeah.
Pub, and if you're a patron, you get a discount for your entry.
That is correct.
Actually, you get free entry, so not a discount. You get free entry to that event if you are a patron, and you can come see me and. I think Diego or Pinguino also is going to be performing, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I might hang out.
Yeah, hang out, bebop around, bother people, stand in the way.
Yeah, I'm
all that
really
stuff.
good at that.
Yeah. And then our last event, which is not our event at all, but we wanted to mention it for whoever is here, is there's a Pride March.
Talking about cultural appropriation. This is our event.
This is not our event. This is everyone event who is wanting to celebrate Pride, and that is on the 25th of June. Because it is Pride Month, and if you want to go to that, you can show up at Baquedano Metro Station at 2 p.m., and that's when it starts. Of course, that's not like you have to be there exactly at 2. Before, you can be before or after, because it's, it's a celebration.
Yeah.
It's a march. So do that. Bring your friends. Have a great time if you're celebrating who you are.
Yep, and no discounts there, unfortunately, for our patrons.
No,
we have no
the
say in
patrons
this.
don't get anything. I wish now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, maybe we could have given them a free flag, but like, it's too late. I'm sorry, guys.
Sorry.
But we hope you can come to some of those events, and if you do, definitely say hi to us. And now it's train time.
Trains. Man, this has been a long time coming.
Oh man, I'm super excited that we waited a little bit to do trains, or like this part of trains, because we did the historical part of trains. So if you want to go back and listen to that, the context of what we're talking about, the history, go back. That was a couple episodes ago. That was part 1. Because so much train information has come out since we recorded that first episode.
Exactly. This is why I'm not all that thrilled, because like a lot of the information that I prepared like a month ago is now a bit
now expired.
Yeah, like I try to just like tweak it here and there and update these things, but as far as I, as well as I can, but there are certain things that might not be up to date anymore. A lot of things have happened. Mm-hmm. But since we're recording on daytime now.
Oh yeah, it's a weird time.
It's
First
a weird
of all,
time. I'm awake.
I'm more sleepy. See, I'm not a daytime person. If you
Yeah.
notice, I have coffee. It's like
I
2
got
something
beer.
in the afternoon. I have coffee. Like it's 5 in the morning, and like I'm a very weird like.
Circadian rhythm.
I have none.
You're like an owl.
For reals.
Yeah.
My neck even goes all the way around. Mel would be proud because Lau and owls and chuncho. Okay. What was it saying? Stop distracting me. This is a podcast. We're professionals.
Yeah.
Oh, so much exciting news coming out about trains. I'm excited. You should be excited. Trains are a big deal in
I'm
Chile
off my
right now.
rocker.
Old man off his rocker.
Ooh. Damn.
Rocking back. Okay, so get us started.
Yeah, I'll get us started. So, you remember last time we talked about trains, we were starting off with the history of trains.
Mm-hmm.
You started with the history of trains, and I think then I gave a little overview of the current situation, what kind of projects
Timeline
are
sort of
like,
situation.
what kind of projects are in the pipeline right now, and I think we kind of cut it there. Because it was getting really long already. We'll get ready for another long episode.
That's what he said.
So, what we're going to do today is this is basically two parts, which hopefully we can fit into one episode. We're going to talk about a little bit why do we need a train? Like, what are the reasons for it? Because it's not as simple as just like, well, we need a
Choo-choo.
choo-choo,
Choo-choo,
why would
motherfuckers.
we not need a train? I mean, there are several reasons that are worth mentioning. And also, what are the challenges? Because, if we really need a train that badly, why hasn't it happened yet? And there are a bunch of reasons this hasn't happened yet.
Just one bunch.
One bunch, no two bunches, just one bunch. So, let's get started. Why
Yes.
do we need a train? Now,
Welcome to my TED Talk.
welcome to my TED Talk. One thing has to do with the infrastructure or alleviating the infrastructure. Like, because implementing a more widespread railroad system, and especially for cargo trains, that would take a lot of traffic off the streets and
Right.
relieve the strain on them. So basically, less taxpayer money is spent on their maintenance,
Right.
which then, of course, will go towards train infrastructure. I gotta say that too. But,
And yeah.
Streets will be...
And as a reminder, if you're forgetting a little bit about what we talked about, some of the reasons we don't have trains is because during the dictatorship, there was a big push to sort of give support to the truckers, which, if you've ever listened to this podcast, we talk about the truckers almost every
we
single...
love truckers.
Those trucker motherfuckers, yeah, we love them.
Mother
Okay.
truckers.
So, if you've ever listened to this podcast, they have a lot of power and a lot of pull politically, and so trains sort of disappeared because of lack of support from the dictatorship, a lack of infrastructural support, lack of money, all those kind of things. So, just reiterating what we talked about last time, and continue.
Trucks and trains, right on. So, yeah, taking off strain of the infrastructure. That same, by the way, goes for airports because not airports are not going to become redundant, but a lot of cargo is going to be routed through trains instead of planes. So this is going to take some stress off the airports as well.
Trains and automobiles.
So to exemplify a little bit of math, because I know you love that, a double-track railroad trench with a width of 25 meters.
Okay, what is this?
A double-track railroad trench. So basically you have a railroad trench and you have basically two tracks in there.
So, you're talking about train tracks.
Yes.
Remember to try to use words that I can understand.
I'm
Talk
talking
like
about
you're talking
double-track
to a
railroad
15-year-old.
trench. Right. I mean, the trench, because usually there are little tracks are in a little
No,
trench.
no, I get what you're saying.
there
I just
you
want to
go.
I just
So-
want to make sure I understand and
Exactly.
all of the audience members who are on my level.
So imagine two railroad tracks side by side.
Right? One going one direction, one going the other.
Exactly. And these two railroad tracks side by side, this trench has a width of 25 meters. And has a capacity of 12 trains per hour with
Nice.
666 passengers each. And I can see why the Catholic Church might have an issue with that, which is fine. I'm not making these numbers up. I read this somewhere. So that would make, do the math for you, that would make a total of 8,000 passengers per hour and direction. So you had,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds awesome.
It sounds awesome. Now, in comparison, it is awesome too, because in comparison, like a 6-lane highway with a width of 75 meters would allow for a throughput of 4,500 cars per hour, with an average of 1.7 passengers on board, making it a total of 7,650 passengers. Now compare that to the 8,000.
And also traffic and
Exactly.
and
So
crashes and
that means trains use less than a third of the same space that be needed to move the same number of people by car. And also I really wish that Carretera Austral had 6 lanes. I don't know where they pulled that
yeah, I was
example
like,
out.
trust me. I was like, where's the 6-lane
Yeah,
highway?
like
I've been
where? Like
going
I've
on
never
the-
seen any
I've
of
been
those
going
here.
on the wrong, yeah, because it's 2 lanes.
Right, but the more reason,
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. To be clear, we don't have that here, so it even compounds how good a train would
Yeah,
be.
I mean, like Carretera Austral is just like ridiculous because it's just like 1 lane each direction, and
I mean, compared to all the other Latin American
everywhere,
countries,
but-
we have the best highways, like
Yeah, that
by
is true.
far. But it's not. It can't keep up with the amount of movement that those highways have
I mean,
in
at
and
some
out of
points you
Santiago.
have just like 1 lane each direction. It's just like, really, how's that working? I mean,
You might as well walk at some point.
yeah, why not? So much for passenger trains. Now, in terms of infrastructure, where we talk about cargo trains, like there are about 6,000 trucks coming in and out of seaports in the 5th region, Valparaiso and so on. Now, a railway system could alleviate the congestion by up to 30%, actually. So we wouldn't rely that much on trucks anymore. So that is a huge strain on
Yeah.
the infrastructure that trains would basically alleviate.
Right.
Second point, let's talk a little bit about efficiency. According to the OECD data, the cost of local logistics in export-oriented countries is around 9% the value of the product. In Chile, it's more than double and growing, actually.
Right.
So trains are, of course, much more energy efficient than vehicles or even planes.
Right.
And this will, in consequence, drastically reduce the cost per unit of cargo as compared to other means of transport. Like, you know what I'm saying, right?
Right.
So yeah, basically, like a product piece of unit of whatever, like a soda, hit close to home, has like its own cost, and then of course you
The
need to
cost of
factor in the cost for
transportation.
transport. And if you do it by train, like this whole thing on average will,
The
the
actual
whole cost
product
of
itself, right?
that item will just become a lot cheaper. Now for passenger trains, that's a very different story. I'm going to talk about that a little later.
We are more expensive to transport.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty there a little further on.
Gritting it.
Another,
I mean, because it puts the burden of the cost of the transportation on the actual train, right? Rather than like the person who had to buy the car and buy the gas, right?
You mean when it comes to cargo?
Right.
Yeah, and also you can just ship a lot more with a train. I mean, you have one train, you have I don't know how many carts or wagons, if you will, like on the train, which you can just fill up with I don't know copper ore,
Right.
and then the basically the
Oh,
the,
so
the,
you're talking
the fuel
about
costs.
cargo train versus passenger train as far as like.
No. I'm talking about cargo train versus vehicle and cargo vehicle, if you will.
Okay, and you're going to get more into that because I'm a little confused.
Sorry.
In a little bit longer.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the situation with the passenger train. It's a little bit different there because basically, well, in a nutshell, you cannot stack passengers.
I'm okay.
If we could stack passengers, I think things
Staying
would
away
look a
from
little
that.
bit differently. But yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Staying
oh no!
away from
oh
that.
my God! No, I didn't even.
Okay, keep
Good
turning.
Lord.
keep
Yes,
going.
yes,
Just keep going. Okay.
Yes.
Um.
Not talking about history. All right, so let's talk a little bit about time savings here. Because for passenger trains, in many situations,
Comfortable passenger trains
comfortable
that have. Okay, there you go.
no stacked passengers whatsoever. Like in many situations, the train can cut down on travel time significantly, and sometimes it will even cut the time in half because you don't have to deal with traffic jams. And anybody who's ever taken the metro
have
here in
to
Santiago
drive.
knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you don't have to drive. You can like read a book or like play on Instagram or
Exactly,
whatever,
and they
shop.
go faster. They go faster too than most, or they could go faster than most cars.
And we're talking about electrical trains. Let's be clear. We're not talking about like choo choo, coal.
Yeah, I mean, but even if we talk about diesel fuel trains, they still can go faster than most cars.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, but I was specifically when you were talking about the environmental impact kind of situation. I was like, we're not burning coal here
That's a different thing.
to
Right.
choo it
Right.
down the. And everybody from Europe's like, of course not, Bethany, duh. And I'm like, look, the U.S. is still relying on lots of coal trains, so.
Yeah, but I think,
and the
but I think
Singer
a
coal
lot
train.
of trains here are still diesel operated.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. But like, we're talking about future trains in Chile are not going to be
Right.
those,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir. This electric or hydrogen even. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
different thing.
Steam. Steampunk power.
Hamster powered. Just by a million little hamsters.
You have to clean them out for dying for no particular reason.
Well,
Just sudden death.
yeah, they're disposable hamsters.
No, we don't think that. We
No,
love
no,
hamsters.
hamsters are cute. So what I was saying is that they can go faster. They don't have to deal with traffic jams. So that this will not only improve the quality of life for a lot of people who would then take the train instead of hop into the car. It would also benefit the economy if you look at it from that angle because people come to work not as late. They take less time to get to work, which means that they either have more time to work or more time to spend with the family, however their priorities are.
Because there are a lot of people who work in Santiago, but they live in Viña or Quillota or I don't know, Limache or whatever, and they drive every morning and every afternoon to those places, and it's a lot of burden on those families just because Santiago is so freaking expensive to live in. It's even cheaper for them to do that commute.
And every month more expensive.
Every month. Not New York expensive, but we're just looking at those. Yeah.
Hopefully not, but yeah. Okay, since you were mentioning coal trains, the coal train.
Right.
Let's talk about
Put
the
the music
environmental.
in the background.
What, John?
John Coltrane.
John Coltrane, of course. Let's talk about a little bit about the environmental impact of trains, because if Chile wants to become carbon neutral, trains are a no-brainer. Like it has to be. It's got to be inevitable, because a train load of cargo is equivalent to about 60 trucks, while a train's emissions are about a fourth of the equivalent number of trucks.
Right.
Yeah. So that's something now, and this is really good argument. You cannot unknow it, and this is a good argument for trains. In terms of passenger trains, like this is even more pronounced. Now, taking high-speed trains as an example for mid and long-distance travels, these trains generate 5 to 7 times fewer CO2 emissions than their alternatives. Compared to air traffic, there's even a reduction of up to 90% in emissions. Like if you travel the same distance with a train instead of a plane, you only making 10% of the emissions that you would usually
amazing.
make. Yeah,
And
that's a lot.
And that's super important because a lot of people fly here in Chile. So if you're not driving, a lot of people fly. Like if you have a house in La Serena or Concepcion or like whatever, people fly a lot. Especially because if you participated in Cyber Monday or whatever, you look at those plane tickets, they're so cheap.
Yeah.
And so people fly a lot here in Chile because it takes a long time to drive,
It's
and
a
there's
long
not
country.
there's not a lot of people that have cars. His cars are insanely expensive. It's a long country, right?
Yeah, it's a long country. Yeah.
It's a long country.
It's not a big country, it's a long country.
Yeah, and I mean, you could take a bus, which some people do, but buses again are subject to the ebbs and flows of traffic, and also pollution,
And also take really long. I mean,
and not comfortable, really.
yeah, I mean, depends if you book
Depends
a
on the-
comma, semi-comma. I
Yeah.
mean, when I was in my 20s, I did book a bus to San Pedro de Atacama. That was like 30 hours. Like, I'm not going to do that again.
I mean, I don't think I would ever do that. Not even when I was in my 20s.
It was an experience, but yeah.
I remember it.
My butt was flat after that, so yeah.
I don't mind taking buses to like Vina or whatever, but like I mean, anyway, I would rather take a train, so I'm trying to say.
Yeah, train.
High-speed train.
Now, also since Chile strives to become a leading producer in green hydrogen in the near future, this is also like it has tremendous potential to be applied in the sector as the concept of hydrogen-powered trains already exist. I don't know if these hydrogen-powered trains do already exist as such, you know what I mean? But like the concept is out there.
Right.
It's doable. So if Chile really does its thing with the green hydrogen, one sector where they might apply this are trains, cargo and passenger
But are
trains.
the private companies that already are in bids to put their trains up, are they thinking in terms of hydrogen, or are they thinking?
No, this is future. This is because
Oh,
I mean,
this is future trains
future
that we
future
haven't.
train, yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, like we're not even producing enough green hydrogen.
No.
Like we would have. I mean,
That's why I was like, not yet.
No. I mean, that was one of
Girlfriend.
the long-term plans. I think Piñera came up with that, and he was like, "We need to be the world's leading producer of green hydrogen," which kind of
Like,
makes sense because,
sure.
like, dude, like we got solar energy, we got a lot of water. I mean, duh, you know. But the infrastructure needs to be there first in order to
Yeah, I
be
mean,
able
I'd
to
like
power
to
trains.
also be the leading producer of hot dogs, but we have to have the infrastructure too to do that.
I would love to be the leading producer of
Leading
hot dogs.
producer of salchichas.
Okay, that's not
You
thing
know
to
what I
say.
mean,
I know what you mean. All right. So if they really applied this on like green hydrogen trains, that would mean literally zero carbon emission for its operation, as the waste product of hydrogen trains is just water. That's all that comes out the other end, the tailpipe.
But is it water that can be used for other things,
Yeah,
or is it like wasted water?
No, it's not wasted water. It's clean H2O, like with no
Nice.
minerals, no nothing. I mean, it could be used to iron your shirts because it doesn't leave mineral residue. You know.
I definitely never iron my clothes, but okay.
Oh Lord, you barbarian. So, no. In,
Did you just call me a Bob-barian?
a barbarian.
You Bob-barian.
Now, in fact, the promise of a railroad system running on mostly green hydrogen could give that sector a tremendous push in development. You know what I mean?
Like the clean
yeah,
hydrogen
because
sector.
if they say, okay, look, we have a whole railroad system here and we can use hydrogen-powered trains, how's the hydrogen production coming along? And people might be like, okay, maybe the political will behind that will be pushing this whole thing a little
I mean,
bit
it
more.
depends. If it's too good, then the other industries are not going to like that a lot.
The
So, I
dairy
mean,
industry.
the other industry, the Ubre industry is not going to like that a lot. I mean, all of these things are of course political.
Yeah,
but-
of course. I mean, it really depends on future governments if they are as green as the current one. But I guess
Mm-hmm.
at some point, that's just I mean, personal
it-
opinion. At some point, like
Ethically,
future
it's a
governments
good
don't
idea.
really have
A choice.
choice to be green or not because we're inching closer to the abyss every day. We're all
Mm-hmm.
fucked people. You already know that.
Though it is a beautiful day outside. It's the middle of June. We should be freezing our tits off, and it's a gorgeous day outside.
Hooray for global warming.
Hooray. I'm good with saving the earth after my wedding, so I'm not freezing my tits off during my wedding next year. But then we can save the world after that.
Sure, no problem. Apocalypse later. All right. So,
Apocalypse now.
talking about energy, we also should talk about energy autonomy because having a train network running exclusively on green hydrogen, and given that the train traffic will substitute the road traffic in large parts, it will make Chile a lot more independent from oil imports, which, as we see these days, can be
Which is
absolutely critical
Right.
because, Ukraine war and things getting more expensive. You want to be independent when it comes to your energy supply.
Right,
or
because
as
we're not
independent as
talking
possible.
about the oil we cook with, which is also a concern for imports these days, just to clarify.
Yeah, that's the different thing. It's a lot of oil is
There's
a
a
problem
lot of
these
oil,
days. Very
lots of
oily
different
problems.
types of oil.
Right. Let's talk about decentralization a little bit. I think this is a big one because
This is so important
Yep.
to Chile.
because
We have a big problem here.
Hold on. Hold on. Let me
You're
just.
still going, right?
let me
I never
just,
stopped. That's what he said. Okay.
God, nice.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
Now, talking about decentralization, a decent railway infrastructure could also tremendously contribute to the development of
Can
suburbs.
you explain a little bit about the importance of decentralization in Chile?
Sure, if you want to. I mean, right now Chile is an extremely centralized state. Like everything that happens in Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to be somebody, Santiago. You want to find a good job, Santiago. You want to go anywhere in Chile, you got to go through
How much
Santiago.
percentage of our population lives here?
It's like hold on. It's I think in the central or in the metropolitan in the fifth region. More than 60%,
Yeah.
and also more than almost 70% of the gross domestic product is being.
Yeah.
So you get an idea. It's like in terms. I don't even know how much percent in terms of area this is
Mm-hmm.
compared to all of Chile, but it's not big.
Right, and that also contributes to the growth in the prices of property here
Oh, yeah.
and the competition here, and then there's also a huge transportation issue because everybody lives in one part of the city and everybody works in another part of the city.
Yes.
So it's a really big deal. We have been as Chile. When I mean we have been 78%, says Pinguino, is
Of the what? Of the population?
of the population lives in Santiago or the fifth region. That's insane.
Yeah, let's put the two together, right? Because that sounds a little too
Not
much.
the fifth region, the 32 comunas of Santiago.
78%. That sounds a little too much to me.
No,
but-
I heard 80. So.
What?
Mm-hmm.
This is according to the 2017 census.
That sounds
So
like...
it might be even a bit higher.
Or it might be lower because of the pandemic.
That's true.
Well, anyway,
Anyway, a lot.
a lot of people, and so it's actually been like a project for a long time to try to like get people to move the F out of Santiago and work in other places, which the pandemic has helped
Yeah.
along a little bit. I would love to see the numbers of how many people moved out of Santiago to live in other places. and work
But
virtually.
there's a big obstacle there, which is
It's the bud.
infrastructure also,
Oh.
because you want to move to Limache, who
Yeah,
just
yeah,
got
yeah.
recently, as
They
you
just got cables.
told that they just got cables. You want to live somewhere else, you want to telework, you gotta have proper internet, you know. And this is where this whole thing is going with the trains, because a decent railway infrastructure could really contribute to the development of the suburbs or even rural regions, as it makes commuting or even just traveling to the big population centers a lot more feasible, while at the same time people don't have to pay the same level of rent as they would in Santiago and
Exactly.
Concepcion. Now, speaking of Concepcion, by the way, just a little update here from the last train episode. Boric actually made good on his promise to include the Concepcion and the Santiago Chillán train service.
Great.
And that was announced about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
And
like right after we recorded.
Yep, exactly. And orders for high velocity trains were placed to operate this route in 2023. So this is the part of the so-called Plan Desarrollo Ferroviario 2022-2026, or Railroad Development Plan 2022-2026, which also includes Santiago Valparaíso and Santiago San Antonio.
Oh, that's gonna be amazing.
Yep. So if you want to go to Chillán, you can also go to Concepcion from there. No.
And Concepcion, I think, is the second largest city in
Yes,
Chile.
ma'am.
So that's one of the cities that they've been really trying to push industries to put their business centers there, to open offices and everything, because it has at least enough infrastructure right now to have more people living in it,
Yeah.
but not a lot of like jobs for those people.
Yeah.
So
And costs are comparatively lower.
so if they can make these transportation situations better, it gives more of an incentive, because there's already tax incentives for businesses to open their offices in other parts of Chile. and then it's all getting you see what I'm saying? It's getting
No, I
easier.
see what you're saying. I mean,
You see what I'm
that
saying,
potential
which
should be
makes no
used.
sense if you think about it. You see what I'm saying?
That's an oxymoron.
Look at that.
Moron.
Look at
Oxymoron.
You know what? Go fuck yourself.
Fine.
Okay.
I will. Okay.
I love you.
So yeah, I love you too. So, speaking of the decentralization, right? So basically, life will become a lot more attractive in those places, and they will attract urban developments. If it's easier for people just to commute to places like, I don't know, like rural places.
Right.
Let's say Temuco. I don't want to bash on Temuco, but hey, Temuco
Mm-hmm.
or
I
Talca,
was
if you
just
will.
talking to somebody yesterday about how hard it is to get the Lampa. Like there are actually things
it's
in
close.
Lampa.
It's quite
It's
close.
really close,
but
but the
it's just a pain
actual
to get there.
road to get to Lampa like goes out of the way because again we do have mountains, right? So you have to go out of the way like around a mountain, and because I have a friend who like has an office in Lampa for some reason, and he has to go there like once a week, and it's just like a pain in the butt. But imagine like if things were easier to get to some of these
it's just
places.
like every time I apply for jobs, I go like, "Can you come to our office in Lampa or Colina?" Or I'm just like,
I mean, if I don't have to
Thanks.
ever work there, then sure.
Yeah.
I'll go over there for an interview,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
But if I
maybe.
never have to go
But,
back to Lampa,
yeah,
then
no
I'll
kidding,
be okay.
No kidding. So yeah, so basically, as I said, life would become a lot more attractive for people there. It would spur urban development, but also the same goes for business development in the
Right,
regions
like I was
other than
saying.
the Región Metropolitana, which then would have an impact on local tax revenue, which in turn will further development of that region, and so on and so forth. So you get a whole economic kickstart out of this whole thing. And also politically, it's very relevant as it will improve the link between the regional capitals and their relationships,
Right.
Now, okay, you gotta also consider, okay, you got the chicken and the egg problem there. Okay, what comes first? Like, do you need the train to spur the development, or do you need the development first to
infrastructure?
make the train worth it to go there? But you gotta start somewhere,
Right, exactly. You have to start somewhere because we've been, like, we, as in Chile, have been sort of jerking off with this decentralization idea for so many years. It's like, we got to do something. Obviously, the tax breaks that y'all are giving these businesses are not incentive enough for these businesses to put their offices in other places. You gotta work harder. You gotta do something. So
Yeah,
there's that.
yeah, that's the thing, because you just don't have the externalities there,
And imagine. So this is just me, like, thinking as an educator. So we have anybody who wants to be anybody in this country goes to like one of like 3 universities. Like one is in Valparaiso and 2 of them are in Santiago. Imagine if you could have more infrastructure, more businesses. You could also have more opportunity for more universities to improve, to get better teachers, get better, funding, and just have a more diverse workforce, right? Because now we have the exact same 4 teachers that have taught every single worker that's getting jobs in Chile. I don't know. This is me just thinking as an educator.
No, but I mean, there's a point to be made here also about a little bit more specializations of the cities, because I mean, of course, people like businesses don't want to go to, let's say, Concepcion. I mean, probably there are a couple of businesses there, of course,
Right.
but like, of course, you always prefer Santiago because this is where you got like the spillover effects, is where the competition is, where all the university graduates are, where you get a bigger pool of everything, like all the infrastructure. Now with a better connection between these cities, like you can make the case that maybe Concepcion is going to be like, you know what, we're going to really try to push the development of, I don't know, let's say the car industry, if Chile had any. It's a bad example.
We don't make cars.
But whatever.
I wouldn't drive a car that Chile made.
Oh boy.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I know. And there's a reason that Chile doesn't make cars anymore. Or Argentina.
Okay, let's say financial services. Like Concepcion could maybe say, okay, let's gonna focus on financial services, and then Concepcion could be like the city where people go to study finance and management.
Sure,
where
like,
all the companies are.
Exactly. Or I just think, or for example, Viña is a huge, like Viña Valparaiso region in general has so much infrastructure, so many empty apartment buildings, just so many. But no jobs. So many people hate Santiago, and they're from Viña. They're like, I hate Santiago, but I live here because this is where the jobs are. Because you have to get, like, if you want to work in Viña, you have to get, like, up on the ladder. So people come here to university, they graduate here, they work for 20 years, and then they finally get to move back to Viña. And so it's like, imagine if those jobs are already in Viña, then I wouldn't have to deal with people from Viña.
That's the only reason we need a train to Viña.
And I can joke about that because my fiance is from Viña.
You got the permit there, okay.
Yeah, I get the permission.
All right. let's talk about briefly about social justice. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Because with a railroad connection, I think also many socioeconomically vulnerable localities would have an easier access to better
Absolutely.
infrastructure, like
Mm-hmm.
hospitals, commerce,
They wouldn't have to
schools,
buy a
whatever, and
car or
better
whatever.
paying jobs too.
Yep.
So
Schools, that's a
that's a
huge
big thing.
thing because obviously I don't have to convince anybody probably listening to this podcast that education is the backbone of how you can escape poverty. But because of the way that Chile is so centralized, if you're poor and you live in a poor sector, your children are going to go to a very poor quality school because right now with the current constitution, they don't offer quality education. That's not something that's under it's a right for
It's not a
people.
thing.
It's not a thing. It's like you have the opportunity to go to a school and the school is completely underfunded and it's mostly filled the classrooms have 50, I'm not joking, 50 students to a class. But let's say you can now take a train 25 minutes to another school and now you have a completely different opportunity for your child,
Yeah.
right? Because you could never afford a car before or anything like that. So that, and also school buses aren't a thing here. That's also not a thing. Free transportation to
Nope.
school, not a
Nope.
thing. So you're going to go to the place that's the easiest school to get to
Right.
if you don't have another choice.
And you're also not bound by locality when it comes to your job. You could
Right.
actually apply to a job that would normally be out of reach for you.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of distance, you can like, okay, now you can apply to the job that maybe pays better.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. So I think it's a huge step forward in terms of social justice.
And quality
If
of life for
yeah,
people from lower socioeconomic levels. Because I've talked to so many people who are like, oh yeah, my commute's 2 hours from I don't know Puente Alto because I have to take two buses and a train to get to where I'm working near Metro Manquehue,
yeah,
and I get paid really well, but I have to commute that time. And
yes,
like for example, nanas and janitors and all of these type of people, they have these insane commutes because
mm,
they work for rich people
right,
and they don't make a lot of money and they have these insane commutes, so their quality of life will increase so much
yeah.
more and they'll actually get to have some time to enjoy their lives,
Yeah, I mean,
which is so
I had
important.
coworkers from San Bernardo. They had to get up every day at 5
Yeah.
to be
I
in the
mean,
office by 9.
I used to commute like really early in the morning to Loranachea from the center, and
Ugh,
that's only about an hour 15 in a bus. But
without traffic.
but every single person on that bus with me were like nanas and construction workers who had already been on the bus probably 30 minutes by the time I got
Yeah,
on there. And they're getting off like in Lovanachea in the richest neighborhood, and then they're gonna do the exact same commute going back home. And they were on that bus before I was, and I got on at 6:15 in the morning. So
yeah, not fun.
not fun.
Not fun at all.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, definitely. There's a lot of benefits in that area as well.
Yep, absolutely. Let's talk about job creation
Do it.
because this whole thing, if we're gonna do trains seriously, if we're gonna do serious train thing, okay, I know where your mind went, but no. If we're gonna take trains seriously, if we're really gonna like ramp up the infrastructure, like these large scale projects of revitalizing the Chilean railroad promises thousands of new jobs in the process.
Right.
And not only during the construction process, but also beyond that, like chiefly in the service sector. Like somebody has to, if you have more train stations, you gotta have people working there,
Yep.
and so, people who maintain the system and so on and so forth. Now, one could actually make the argument that this is a zero sum game because especially if it's not accompanied by economic growth, because like I've heard it a couple of
I could
times.
see that.
People were a couple of times, we're gonna do train and the economy is gonna grow so much, so there's gonna be more work. It's like, yeah, but you're making a big assumption here that like train equals economic growth, which I don't think is that easy. But
No.
if it really follows that route, yes. And also you gotta see if we have a widespread train infrastructure here that creates new jobs, of course there are going to be other jobs that are going to be cannibalized by this whole thing.
Right, but it depends on what jobs you're cannibalizing because again, what is it? Again, I do not remember numbers, but it is I would say at least 70% of workers in Chile are independent workers without contracts. That means without a minimum wage guarantee. They're selling vegetables, or they're entrepreneurs, and they I don't know, they don't have any formal jobs or protections under an automatic AFP, or which of course that's changing, or insurance. But if they could go from selling vegetables in La Vega to working full time at a train station, they could have some of those protections. But maybe there's no, maybe there are literally no jobs in Lampa right now for them to work at. But then suddenly a train station opens and
Right.
they can sell their vegetables at a formal little mini market in the train station in
Yeah,
Lampa,
and
or
the state cashes in because they be paying taxes, you know?
yeah, exactly. And so I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm not saying that trains are going to make the economy grow. I could see how trains.
Maybe.
I mean, I could see how trains can benefit very much the state. Maybe not the economy, but the state, which can then boost the wealth of the people, which can then buy products. Which it's like,
I
again,
mean,
what comes first, the chicken or the egg sort of
right. I
situation.
mean, but also I just talked about this before when it comes to efficiency. You know,
Uh-huh.
like this whole thing. Okay, yes, it does benefit the economy because it lowers transportation costs when it comes to cargo. You know,
Right.
that. But I wouldn't go so far to say, okay, this is
Oh,
going
now
to
we're
be a
gonna be rich,
driver
right.
of economic growth all by
It's a
itself. You know,
in a micro level, it contributes to like the macro economy. If we have everything like this sort of working on with their, we oiling the pistons a bit, it's going to make
exactly.
things
It's make it more efficient. So
exactly.
then, yeah, of course, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very interested because the majority of my students work in the energy industry. And so all of these projects like trains or like any way that Chile can become more self-efficient when it comes to transportation is always going to be good for Chile.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the dependence we have on oil from other countries, or we're insanely dependent on gas from other countries. And so the more and more we can get independent on our own sort of transportation, all the vehicles come from other countries.
Yeah.
We're cutting down on the amount of gas, we're cutting down on the amount of vehicles. It is going to help Chile.
Right.
So, and the average person. So anyway, I'm excited about it. I want a train. Let's get a train now.
Choo-choo.
I want it.
All
Choo-choo.
right. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about your pet peeve because I know that's because another reason why we need a train is to break the monopoly of the truck drivers.
Yeah.
You know, because not only are trucks the only means of getting goods to most parts of the country, they also have the power to completely paralyze traffic along the Carretera Austral. As we've actually seen, like last month, you know, they
just all the time.
absolutely all the time. They just absolutely block this whole thing, and this is, and I mean, you've said that before, like, and I agree with you that yes, of course, every group of workers has their right to go on strike,
Absolutely.
but some have more power than others,
Right.
and it can be that they can basically, for all intents and purposes, cut off an entire part of the country from all kinds of supplies.
Yeah, and some
you
like
can't have this kind of
life-saving
power.
supplies, like, dude, if you're cutting off stuff that hospitals need, if you're cutting off, I don't know, baby formula, you know what? And again, you have the right to protest. I don't ever want to be the kind of person that says there's a right way and a wrong way to protest. I'm not that kind of person. There's a reason we're getting
Eso no es la forma.
there is a reason we're getting a constitution, but there's just truck drivers have a level of power that is quite fascinating. Let's say we go a lot
It's
into these.
disproportionate.
It's again, and it has been handed to them by the dictatorship, literally. So, if you want to get more into details about that, we do have trucker episodes, and it affects disproportionately also the indigenous community, the way that they're protesting. And I don't have to agree with all the protests, right? As somebody who believes in protests, that doesn't mean I agree with, storming the Capitol building because you're a fascist, right? So I don't have to agree with those things, and I don't agree with the things that the truckers are doing. They have a right to do it, yeah, but we also have a right to be like, oh, let's build a train so they can stop being assholes.
Exactly, and there needs to be like an alternative, like. And I think this applies to all sectors. Like, okay, if one group decides, okay, we're going on strike because we don't like conditions XYZ, whether it's
Sure.
justified or not, you can say, okay, that's fair, but we do need to ensure that at least the bare minimum of whatever service you provide is being provided to the people who need it. So there's
Right.
always
It's the
there
government's
always needs to be a way
responsibility.
around it.
Right. It's the government's responsibility, one, to try to bridge the gap between like workers who feel like they're not getting what they need, and then also still taking care of the population in the meantime.
Exactly.
And as we talked about in our trucker episode that you can go listen to, the government, especially the Borch government right now, is trying to have conversations with the the truck drivers, but some of them just aren't having it. And what else can you do after that? Now
Yeah.
at this point, they're just being assholes.
Right, and right now, like, we can't have that. So basically,
No.
that's another reason
You
that
can't
we
have
need
supplies
the train.
cut off in the middle of a fucking pandemic
Goes
from
right. I mean,
hospitals. Like, it just can't happen.
And look, like, even if we have like a wide spanning train infrastructure, the trucks are not going to be disappear. The trucks are going to be
No,
there. They're
like,
going to
we're
ship
not saying
stuff
no
from,
more trucks.
No,
No.
of course not. But it's like it's something that runs in parallel. And if they decide to strike, then we can still say, okay, maybe we're not going to be able to deliver as many meds to Puerto Montt or whatever Concepcion as they need right now, but at least it's the bare minimum so people don't die.
And then we can shift. We can
You
say like, okay, let's start shifting these meds from the truckers to the trains, or we can say like, let's prioritize like essential supplies and put them on trains,
Yeah.
while things that are non-essential supplies we can put on trucks. Like,
it's
we
the
can
workaround that we need for
exactly,
that
and
one.
the truckers still have power. Like, we're not going to start ignoring them, or we shouldn't. Like, I will say that even if I don't agree with them, we should not ignore the truckers and what they need. They have a right to say what they need, but there needs to be a balance, and it's the government's responsibility to protect the citizens, all of them, not just the truckers. You know, not just the people that they agree with politically. So, yeah. That's what I gotta say. There you go.
Awesome, perfect.
He told you it was my pet peeve, so I was gonna get on my little soapbox. But more information about truckers, check out our trucker episode.
You should check it out. Okay, last point I have. Good reason for trains is, well, better than nothing. It's a low accident rate. I mean, people forget about that.
Yep.
But the accident rate of trains is way lower than those of vehicles. Even though there was a very gruesome train accident in Germany like a week ago or
but
something.
I mean, it's like
But
planes. Like, everybody's like, planes are
exactly.
gonna crash, and it's like, dude, it's the safest way to travel. Though,
Yep.
are trains safer than
Yes.
are trains safer than planes? Really?
I do not know, but I know that according to stats, the number of victims due to train accidents is 85 times lower than those of car accidents.
I mean, that
so,
just makes sense.
You know. So those were the reasons we should have a train. In, well, not only my opinion, a lot of opinions that I've came across. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges about creating a wide spanning train.
Sure, because there's obviously
network.
going to be we're like talking it up, and then we can't not talk about the challenges that come with it.
Right, and I think one of the biggest challenges is the infrastructure per se.
Sure.
No, because large parts of the country's existing infrastructure is in a severe state of disrepair. I think we already mentioned that in the first episode, and it really needs to be overhauled, especially considering cargo trains. Now, that is because rails need to be improved so that the average of 28 kilometers per hour, which is this is the okay. Let me say this again for effect.
What's miles an hour? 28.
Oh, that would be what, like 15 or something, I guess.
15 miles an hour.
Yeah, something like
no.
that. No, yeah. Like, Google it up.
I'm googling it.
The average, and I'm not saying it's the case everywhere, but what I've read is that the average speed that the trains can basically reach on the existing
it's
network,
like 17.
in the existing network is 28 kilometers per hour, which is. And that's what I said.
On the existing network.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, wait, the new trains are only going to go 28 kilometers.
No, on the existing, because
okay.
it's.
Oh, yeah, that's slow.
It's
15
slow.
miles an hour is like,
and that's what I was saying the other day. There's like I bike
can run
faster.
that.
Yeah, exactly. I bike faster than that. So they want to increase this to 70 kilometers per hour, which is still not that fast, to be honest. We're talking about
70
what?
kilometers per hour?
Yeah, we're talking about what, like between 35 and 40 miles an hour, I'd say.
But that's still, I mean,
it's faster.
it's 43 miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, it's
about-
it's pretty embarrassing if you think about some of the trains that were brought over from Germany in the 1940s that could reach up to 130 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, Germans like to go fast.
Yeah, but in the 1940s, I mean, come on, man. And usually trains
I
these days can
mean-
go really fast. So I don't know why they were
Y'all
limiting
spread pretty
themselves.
fast throughout Europe in the 40s, let's just say.
Oh, damn you. And we didn't ask for permission.
No, just did what you wanted to.
Right. Another reason the infrastructure.
Say sorry, not permission.
Yeah, better to apologize and ask permission. Not when it
Sorry.
comes to Germany.
Yeah, I'm not paying reparations. I mean, yeah. So another reason that the infrastructure needs to be overhauled is so that trains can be longer than 550 meters. They aim to make them as long as 1,200 meters.
1,000.
1,200 meters, which, okay, you can transport more cargo, more passengers with one train. Apparently, the existing infrastructure, the rails, does not support that. Also, rails also need to be able to withstand greater weight so that the carriage can be double stacked with cargo containers. You know,
Okay, yeah.
another thing that needs to be taken into consideration here is also tunnels. Tunnels need to be higher. They cannot be low because you cannot double stack them.
Right.
You know,
right.
that's another thing. So weight and height, and also intermodal transfer centers need to be overhauled so that the transfer of cargo from one train to the next or from train to truck is faster and more efficient. So those are all these things that need to be done before we can really talk seriously about having a well-oiled train machine here in the country, you know.
Womp womp.
Also, it's important to mention that not all types of trains can make use of the same infrastructure.
Hashtag not all trains.
Not all trains. Hashtag not all trains. Like, for example, high-speed trains cannot use the same infrastructure as cargo trains. Like, you know, they need different kind of signaling. They need different kind of stations, ticketing, and, you know, it's all a different kind of thing. So therefore, it's not only the rails, but each element in the infrastructure needs to be geared towards the type of train it looks to accommodate to achieve maximum efficiency.
Right.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things, again, let's put it into perspective that it's not like we're inventing the wheel here. Inventing the train wheel. We can and should bring people over from other countries who have had similar problems, who have had to do similar types of infrastructure. Obviously, Chile is going to be very unique in certain aspects, but hopefully, a wise decision would be bringing over a lot of consultants.
Of course.
And all of those kinds of situations.
Yeah, of course. But, you know, like, the point is that you can be like, oh my God, we're going to have
trains in 7 seconds.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, let's just plop down some rails and we're going to, you know, ferry like cargo and passengers or whatever. It's just not that easy, you know? It's like, it's a lot complex.
Sure.
And the reason that because of the reason that cargo and passenger trains, for example, or high-speed trains and cargo trains cannot use the same infrastructure is also the reason why
you can't stack people.
the TVS, because it can't stack people. That's what I mean, theoretically, but I'm not going to go there. This is also why the TVS, you know, the Train Valparaiso-Santiago project, is proposing a cargo line in parallel to the high-speed passenger train line. So it's you see, it's like they want to do both things, but in parallel.
Right.
So it's a different kind of rail that you need for that, apparently. You know, which of course means more cost. But you could even ask, is it always a good idea to have cargo lines running parallel to passenger lines? Because you could say, okay, fine, then let's just like do 2 or 4 tracks, like 2 for cargo, 2 for passengers, and just run it throughout, crisscross around the whole country. But you could say that if they carry dangerous cargo through tunnels, this might not be a good idea, for example.
Put the dangerous cargo with the truckers. Sorry.
Stack it on the people. Now, some types of trains can be mixed using the same infrastructure. That is true, but there's always like the trade-off between cost and efficiency. Like, for example, let's say you have an infrastructure that is made for mixed use, which will probably mean that high-speed trains couldn't really go as fast as they could go on a dedicated infrastructure, and cargo trains couldn't really carry as much cargo that they could on a dedicated infrastructure. So there's that, you know.
But I mean, it just sounds more wise to it sounds more efficient and more wise to take the time to invest in infrastructure that works for both. I mean, just it's going to take time and money, and that's.
I think I think you have to really differentiate here what kind of let's say lines and routes and areas you're talking about. Like, for example, if you have, let's say, between Santiago and or the north and the ports, for example, just to grab an example out of thin air, it would make more sense to just really focus on cargo, because you're going to have a lot more cargo coming down here than passengers, for example.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, but if you're talking about, for example, between Santiago and Concepcion, maybe it would make more sense to focus on passenger trains there.
But then you could just, in that case, you could just decide how many trains you want to run, because if you have the same line, right, and you've built an infrastructure, the same line can do people trains and people trains and product
and
trains,
stuff trains,
people trains and stuff trains. Then you can just decide on how many of those people trains and stuff trains you have on that line per day.
Okay, yeah, but then there's also a limiting factor. There's like, how many trains can you actually run per day? Like, is that feasible? Can the station keep up with this demand? You know what I'm saying?
No, I absolutely see what you're saying.
It's like you really have to consider, okay, are we shifting?
But I would hope they would consider that. Like, these are things that I would, obviously I'm not smart enough to have thought of these things, but I would hope this would all have already been in the minds of whoever,
Oh,
what would be Minister of Transportation? Would
yeah,
that this falls under
yeah.
the Minister of
Juan
Transportation?
Carlos
That
Muñoz,
he
I think. Yeah,
would that he yes he
yeah, Juan
would
Carlos.
be considering with his consultants, hopefully
Right.
some from Chile and some
Oh yeah.
from other countries,
I mean,
right?
I assume that
And
because it's literally his job.
yeah, I mean quite
So
literally
yeah,
his job.
right. Another challenge that we're facing is vandalism.
I mean,
It
yeah.
is not the main thing, but it is a thing. Because just in January this year, just to give you an example, the touristic train line from Santiago to Concepcion was just reopening after 14 years. And then they had to postpone the inauguration because the theft of copper cables along the line. The AFA, they
Aw.
have not given an estimate, but it has been confirmed that they have confirmed that this has become a real pain in the ass during the last month, especially in the O'Higgins region. And I think we can also safely assume that the expansion of the railroad network through the conflict region of Araucanía brings its own set of risks.
Oh sure,
You know,
absolutely.
because that's the thing with trains. I mean, you can say, okay, trucks. What do they need? Streets.
Right.
Streets can be vandalized, but it's you have to hack away at the tarmac to really do some damage there.
I mean, you can burn some
You
tires.
can barricades, whatever, but then you have a railway network, which is a lot more delicate. There are rails, there are signaling stations, there are switch tracks, or how you call them.
Yeah. I don't know how
It's-
but I think they're called switch tracks.
Yeah,
I'm not a
probably
train expert. I'm not a
yeah,
track expert.
you haven't caught up on Snowpiercer yet, have you?
No.
Damn it! But it's like the infrastructure
Watching
is a
Miss Marvel
lot
right now.
more. It's a lot more delicate than streets, if you will.
Oh,
So,
I mean that makes total
a lot
sense.
more
Like
prone to
they're a lot
vandalism.
more able to manipulate. I mean, I've
And they
seen
got copper
westerns.
cables,
You
so
just put
there.
a little piece of dynamite, like, and then boom,
Yep.
and then boom.
Well, you
know?
could do the same thing with streets. So
I don't think it would hurt the street though. I mean, I don't know.
put some dynamite on street and
I
see
don't
what
know.
happens.
I've only seen cartoon versions of this in Back to the
Nice.
Future. Okay, so no, that makes sense. There has to again be. Would that be the job of the intendencia to like problem solve any sorts of potential vandalism in that case? I don't know, but
Yeah,
that also has to be a consideration. And maybe it's good that those copper cables have been stolen. As far as like, okay,
So
now
we switch
this
to
is
fiber
putting.
optics. No.
No. Now this is putting things in the forefront, and it is a stereotype. I'm just gonna say it. I didn't invent the stereotype. I'm just gonna say it that Chileans like to steal things. It's a stereotype. Pinguino looks at me and nods. Yeah. So, let's be aware of that. Let's just make them. We'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it yet.
Yeah, but as you said, like their job is probably to figure out and make the infrastructure vandalism-proof, quote unquote, or
Yeah.
maybe up security in certain critical spots.
And I do think that as far as like in the majority of Chilean protesters go, like you don't fuck with the things that belong to the workers or like the people. You'll fuck with things that belong to industries, but you're gonna try to avoid fucking with things that affect poor people or.
It's a big assumption, though. I mean,
No, I mean, I
you've
just.
seen burned out micros along the way, and that also
Yeah, but those
fucks
are
with the
micros.
workers.
How many? We have micros. If you're gonna fucking shut down an entire train.
No, but what I'm saying is just like people don't always make this differentiation, you know? That's the thing. I mean, it's a big assumption that you make there, but again,
Yeah, we'll see.
like making
Maybe it's just hopeful.
making the infrastructure tamper-proof or upping security, it's not an impossible feat. But again, it makes things more expensive, more complicated, and it's definitely a challenge. You know,
Impossible
the whole,
feat.
yeah, not impossible, but and don't talk about my feet.
Impossible feat.
My
with
feet have
18
nothing to
toes.
do with it. Another challenge here
It's like Midas's foot.
Another challenge here is geography, of course.
Oh yeah.
Because it's funny because we were talking about this and I haven't really gotten into the topic yet because while at first glance Chile might appear to have the perfect geographic layout for train
no,
network,
we have
it doesn't take
mountains.
into account it doesn't take into account it's a very mountainous country, and more so than most European countries actually, and it has a lot of seismic activity here too. That is also a
Bing, bing,
big
bing, 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 bing.
problem here because it makes the construction of a country spanning network a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
You know, because it has to also cargo train networks very much depend on geography because heavily loaded trains can't take a slope that is too steep and can't take curves that are too sharp.
You gotta drill holes through mountains.
Exactly. You have to do alternative is boring tunnels, which
It's boring.
is
Tunnels are so boring.
which can become more than 5 times as expensive, you know?
Sure. You gotta get the right drills, as sometimes I've read so many times Chile has accidentally ordered the wrong drills before.
Well, now they know the drill. Thank you.
Nice. I'll be here all week.
Tip your waitress. It's a similar situation for high-speed trains, whose infrastructure is, of course, a lot more costly to begin with than for cargo trains because it's a lot more delicate. But they also have to be on an almost straight trajectory, which makes sense if you think about it. It's high speed, so you can't have too many curves, and which would make, for example, a bullet train from Santiago to Puerto Montt very difficult to implement.
Yeah.
Because you just can't go straight. It's just like you have to, dodge mountains.
I mean, even if you've like traveled from Santiago to Valpo, like you go through those tunnels, that is a giant hole in a mountain.
Right.
We have drilled a hole in a mountain to make that highway.
Exactly. Again, not impossible, but
just expensive, takes more time.
Expensive. You have to make it earthquake proof.
Yeah, and you have to make sure every single thing that you're doing with those tunnels is not going to, like, there's not going to collapse, that you have the right type of soil. It's very complicated.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing.
It's complicated.
Now, also, people talking about...
And you thought trains were going to be super simple when you tuned in. You were just like, slap some trains down.
Well, joke's on you now.
Joke's on you. Righto, Bido.
Okay. I teased this earlier, the profitability of passenger trains. Let's talk about that a little bit. Now, first off, there's no such thing as a profitable passenger train network.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Even the world's biggest passenger train networks in Europe or Japan are heavily subsidized by the state, making them more a product of political volition than economic incentive. Now, these subsidies usually don't even cover half of the cost of a ticket. Probably the only exception is the bullet train between Shanghai and Beijing, but then again, these are state-owned and from China, so I don't really trust those numbers. That's personal opinion, but...
I trust them.
Yeah, I don't know. When it comes to whatever comes out of Chinese state media, I'm taking it with a grain of salt.
I mean, honestly, whatever comes out of most state media, I take with a grain of salt, to be fair.
True that. Now, actually, a few weeks ago, one of our listeners, I think it was Diego. Hi, Diego.
Which Diego? This Diego Pinguino? He's not a listener.
No.
He works here.
Diego Acevedo was his name.
Okay.
So.
Oh, yes, I remember this guy. Hey, Diego.
Hey, Diego.
Now, your favorite Diego now.
He's... Oh, man.
I don't have to edit this.
See how far you get without me.
It would just be like 8 hours of rambling.
Oh, good Lord. So, Diego sent us an article about how the Metro Tren Nos and the Santiago Rancagua service had to actually increase its capacity to accommodate the rising demand, and making a remark about the profitability of those services. Okay, he might gonna stop being a listener now because I have to throw a wrench in that.
A winch? You
have to
throw a winch?
This damn winch.
God!
Well,
don't throw me.
Well, I'm back in the Middle Ages. That's what I do.
Throw some winches in there.
I'm going to throw a winch in this because...
Salem witch trials. Salem winch trials.
Salem wrench trials, whatever. So, because one thing is the revenue, and, these specific routes might look good on that front. I don't know, but, another thing is the profit, which means revenue minus costs. Now, since the EFA is a public company, I actually did have a look at the latest income statement, and the bottom line is still red. So, now granted, I wasn't able to find the numbers on those two services in particular, but, I could be wrong, and possibly these two taken by themselves actually generate more revenue than cost, but you got to remember that it's one network of a public service, and that the more profitable segments are needed to offset the unprofitable ones. So, okay. Basically, in a nutshell, okay, I'm glad that the Metro Tren Nos and the Santiago Rancagua line have so much demand, but they're still losing money at the end of the day. Because, you need money to keep them operating. So that's the thing. So, talking about profitability, one other problem is that Chile has completely...
Not everything's about profit, Lenny.
Well, if you want to run something, well, added to that is that Chile has completely lost their train culture, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Now, traveling by train is mostly considered to be the poor man's means of transportation, which is very well exemplified by the song Tren al Sur. Gotta listen to that. It's a good song. Which is actually weird because...
It's not the case in a lot of other countries.
Yeah, and also it's not even the case here because it's actually a bit more expensive than going by bus. I did a quick check comparison, like I compared Santiago Chillán by train and by bus, and actually train is bit more expensive, around the same price. But
I mean, I think that comes from, again, the centralized way we think about trains, which is like related more to the metro and then having a car. Because like when you've made it in Chile, you can buy a car, especially now with the cost of
yeah,
cars.
and if you don't use a car, use a plane. So it's just like
Yeah.
buses are not really on your radar
Buses
anyway.
and trains. However, I think that is changing. We talked a little bit about it last train episode, but I do think it's changing, especially since, again, Boric is now the president. The culture of the people voting for Boric, which is like millennials, Gen Z, and then Gen Y, are people who are starting to not be even able to afford cars.
Yeah.
And so it's very much like, okay, help us. And so the whole like association with poor people are the ones who take the train is much more of a boomer idea.
Yeah,
And
and it's
as
also like, owning a car used to be a lot more of a status symbol than it is today.
yeah, but because we can't own a car, so like you can be like
Yeah, no,
you can,
I mean
you
that
can
too,
be
but even before
somebody.
that, like even
Oh,
before
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
it's just
like-
yeah, I could own a car, but I have my Kia Morning or whatever. I don't need a freaking Mercedes. Why?
Right. I mean,
Like even
but-
if you could afford it, it's like why?
well, I do think it's owning a car is definitely still a status symbol, but it's becoming less and less so
Yeah,
because
no, that's what I
less
mean.
and less, less and less people can afford even to buy like a Kia Morning or a Sail or whatever, or is the most economical car of people. I just see Sails all the time on the street, so that's why I said that. So it's becoming less and less that. So I feel like once we have a train, if we have a train in 2026, that it will be, people won't be unwilling, like the majority of people won't be unwilling to ride it. What are you laughing at me for?
I was just thinking because you're seeing a lot of sales on the street. Is it because like the fuel has become so expensive? People are now putting sales on their cars. Going.
I'm glad
This
you
is
make yourself
this is
laugh.
so bad.
I'm
Yeah,
glad you make
I
yourself
think
laugh.
I think I am hilarious.
So
this is what
come
my
to
mind
our,
does.
Come to our bilingual comedy night this month since he's not performing.
It's safe to go.
Yeah, it's safe to go this month. Or if
It's
you just
safe to
want
go.
to, if you really like watching really bad comedy. I'm just kidding.
Jerk. Okay. So, as I said, like as of today, traveling by train on some of the routes is actually a bit more expensive than going by bus, and that also piles on. I mean, if it's the same price or even more expensive and the connectivity sucks, like why would I prefer the train over the bus? That's the thing.
Right.
That's one of the reasons. And so with the fact that that affordable passenger fare doesn't cover the fact that an affordable passenger fare doesn't cover the operational costs of a railroad network being true, even in the most train
Right.
enthusiastic countries, I mean, it's gonna be especially hard for Chile to break even.
Right,
You know what
and
I'm
I think
saying?
that we need to make this distinction. The difference between paying for cost and affordability are very different. Like, not affordability, profitability are very different. Like, let's make that distinction. Being able to pay for the operational cost is one thing. Being able to say that we're making a profit is different.
Okay, yeah, I get you, but I think the argument still stands. Like,
No, I'm not saying the argument doesn't stand.
It's not even covering its own costs. Like, this is where I'm going.
Right, but I think that we need to make the
Okay,
distinction
fair.
because I don't care if the train makes profit as long as the people are taken care of, and because I do think that, as we talked about earlier, there are other ways in which the state and the people can profit in maybe a non-monetary way or in a monetary way in a different way.
It would be nice.
But if it doesn't cover the cost,
Right,
just,
that's the thing. And I mean, it would be even nice if the train network makes a profit because you have to use that money to
sure.
just make future investments into the infrastructure and so
Absolutely.
on and so forth,
Then, of course, that's complicated economics with like, okay, maybe the train's not profitable, but we're being able to make a profit on taxes in a different area that we can then pump into the train. And then, of course, I don't know because I'm not math.
Yeah.
I am not math.
And again, what I was just saying, because I was like stumbling over my own words. Now, that's the thing. It's like you look at countries like Europe, as if that was a country.
The country of Europe.
The country of Europe, where it's a lot more common to take for people to take trains.
Sure.
And if even there, where it's a lot more accepted to take a train, whatever income they have to ticket sales is not going to cover the cost of operation. Imagine how it's going to be here.
Sure.
Where people would have to be coaxed into taking the train in the first place.
I would take the shit out of a train mostly
Yeah,
because
you.
No. I am saying me. This is also I'm a third of this podcast, so I'm gonna give my opinion. I would take the shit out of a train because I hate traveling to Viña and Valparaiso in that fucking traffic.
Yep. No.
And I do not think I'm alone.
And
I think
really
a lot
I hope
of
it's
that's
an
the thing. I
incentive.
think a lot of people, at least again, not talking about the lower socioeconomic level of this, because I am very privileged in the way that like I feel like I land in the very small gap, which is middle class, because this country doesn't have much of a middle class. I think a lot of people in our level of that, like you and I, would be very open to taking the train.
Oh yeah.
To be like, heck yeah, 1 day trip to Valpo instead of being like, okay, we got to leave Valpo at this hour because that's when traffic hits, and then this, nah, yeah, not worth it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. No, I'm with you on that. Like, I hope most of the Chilean population will be too. That will be great. Now,
I'm hoping that they're doing non-fascist related surveys about this. Like again, questionnaires. Like do some research.
fascist
I mean,
surveys.
a lot of the survey places are
Bit
owned by.
biased.
Yeah, they're biased.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I just want good research. Like, I don't want Chile wasting their. I like the idea of a train, but I don't want Chile wasting their money on a train if it's going to hurt people, if it's going to backfire. I don't want that. Like, we could do something else with that money, like invest it in another branch of something.
I can really see train hurting people, but maybe just don't plop down a train where it's not really the biggest
Don't
use.
tie a damsel to a train. Don't throw a winch at it.
Yes, do not throw wenches.
Don't
like
throw
if there's
winches at
one
trains.
takeaway from this
this
episode,
podcast,
it's
don't
like do
throw
not throw
winches.
wenches at train.
What are male versions of winches? Winchos?
Winches. That sounds like a
Winchos.
Mexican gangster. I don't know.
How dare you?
That's just how I roll. Anyway, talking about incentive for passengers now. For passenger trains, studies have shown actually that the train is especially attractive for distances between 400 to 600 kilometers or 4 hours of travel by train with a normal speed. We're not talking about. Are you okay?
Yeah, Pinguino just looked up the male version of a winch. It's called a swain.
A swain.
According to Shakespeare, he invented.
Invented so many words.
Of course, because he invented the word winch.
Oh, it was him?
Yeah, so he also has swain.
Speaking of incentive for passengers, now this is actually interesting because from what I've read, for passenger trains, there are studies that have shown that the train is especially attractive for distances between 400 to 600 kilometers or 4 hours of travel for, by train with a normal speed, not 30 kilometers an hour. And for lesser distances, people usually prefer the car because the time and money savings are not too significant and it gives them more flexibility. For longer distances, the plane becomes more attractive because the time spent at the airport is being more than made up by the short travel time. So also, since airline tickets have become a lot cheaper throughout the years, there is less and less of an economic incentive for passengers to make the switch if the time savings is not significant, A bullet train might reduce travel time, but it can only be implemented on certain lines because of the country's geography, as we talked before, and since those are more expensive, it would be hard to compete with the plane. Either way, there is agreement that the railway culture must be retaken, and the train must be able to position itself as a fast, efficient, and Either way, the agreement is for fuck's sake. Either way, there's agreement that the railway culture must be retaken and the train must be able to position itself as a fast, efficient, and safe alternative. Now, actually, the EFA, they recently launched an app to make the services more accessible and attractive. That happened like a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for that to happen, meaning retaking the railway or the train culture, like a big part here play the points of access, the train stations themselves. Mm-hmm. The questions are they easy to get to? Is there affordable or even free parking? Which is actually a concept that exists in a few cities in Germany. Okay. We just go like, hey, take the train. You can, park your car here for free. Hooray,
That happened to me the time I took a train in Ireland.
All right. See, it's a good idea because it really draws people to the train, because parking is a big thing. Okay, so for existing train stations, would an increase in traffic collapse the local infrastructure? That's the question. Like, are people comfortable with the location of the train station is another question. Like, the author of that article that I read, he made the case that it would be best to revamp Estación Central because it's, central, because hence the name.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's better, and that's just my very layman's opinion, but I think it would be better if there's a new, bigger train station on the outskirts, provided a connection with the public transport, because
Hate Estación Central.
I mean I don't think a lot of people would feel comfortable going to Estación Central, and traffic is bad in that area to begin with, and it will probably collapse if train travel eventually picks up. Although, this would be higher immediate investment cost if they do a train station on the outskirts, but I don't think like Estación Central would be feasible for that.
So here's the thing. I've lived in many places in Santiago. The center, Quinto Normal, many places. I don't feel comfortable walking to the bus station in Estación Central at night by myself. At all. It's because it's not in the train station, like in the metro station. It's you have to get out of the metro station and walk like maybe 5-6 blocks to get to the bus station. So anytime I even pay more sometimes for a bus ticket if it means that I can get off like at Los Dominicos? No, the other one. Pajaritos, to take a bus from there because it immediately goes from the metro station and it comes to the metro station. That, and I just don't think it's a good, if you're trying to appeal to all of Chileans, especially the prejudiced upper crust, to take trains, I don't think investing in, unless you're going to like pull all the way up to the metro Estación Central, which I don't think you should do because that entire 6 blocks that you're walking are vendors. So then you would be displacing a lot of people who make their money off of selling things. So I do agree with you. I agree with you.
Displacing people, rents would probably also skyrocket in that region.
Yeah.
And also, it's a very central part of town, which would experience
Estación Central, central.
and it would experience a very stark increase in traffic. Like the infrastructure will not be able to deal with that.
I agree with you. Like Pajaritos is, far out there, which is where there's another bus station. I would much rather like say like, why don't you invest towards there, towards Pajaritos?
And I also think like Estación Central, there's to be a case to be made for cultural heritage, if you will. I mean, if you want to revamp this whole thing. Oh,
yeah, exactly. No, there's a lot of cultural heritage there.
So I think you'd be better off just saying, okay, let's pick a barren field on the outskirts of Santiago, connect a metro line or 2 metro lines with this, because, people got to get there also without cars, but just do something from scratch, modern, and, play around. You have the space, do whatever you need to do.
We have so much space.
And build the infrastructure so it doesn't collapse when all the people that you expect are actually coming. So I personally think that would be a better idea. So that's the thing. Talking about another challenge, which would be population density, which is something that I really haven't thought about when I did this research, but I read a few articles who made a very compelling case, because one of the key differences between Chile and most European countries is the population density that we have.
Right.
In Europe, you have a lot of small to mid-sized towns, which themselves usually have a wide catchment area, so that people...
A what?
A catchment area. So basically it's just, for example, supermarkets think in these terms. Like, this is why you don't have 2 leaders right next to each other, because one supermarket has a catchment area.
Unless you're in the U.S. and you have a CVS and a Walgreens always across the street from each other.
Well, but they were trying to just take away...
it was a joke, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense in a way, because they want to get each other customers, because people go there because they know there's going to be a pharmacy, But the thing is... supermarkets think in these terms. And they have, like, this... what's another way to call it? Like, area of influence, if you will. So, people that live in nearby villages of these small to mid-sized towns, they're actually drawn to the train station in the nearest town. Now, Chile doesn't really have that, In Chile, almost 50% of its inhabitants, well, actually, you just said more than 70% of its inhabitants reside within the Región Metropolitana, and there are only very few densely populated areas outside of it,
But there are areas that become densely populated during certain times of the year, which is important to point out.
Yeah, but which would mean
and on
that...
weekends.
Huh?
And on weekends.
And on weekends, yeah, I mean, that is true, but, you would still have to justify building the infrastructure around half a year use,
Okay, so, yeah, you're 100% right. I'm just saying, like, I would not consider Viña a town that only has half a year use. I would say you know what I mean?
But,
it has all year use on weekends. You know what I mean?
Okay, gotcha.
The summer is every single day, every single week. That's going to be super useful, but
Right.
like it does not matter what weekend you're going out of town. There's going to be traffic going
Yeah.
to Viña or Algarrobo or all of those areas
Okay, but we're
in.
still talking about a very like centrally located
No,
region.
I mean
Now,
you're totally right. You're totally right.
because if you go up north, you know, like
But
a passenger train
miners.
might be actually completely inviable because
But
this
you
is.
have the miners in the north. I think there's a lot to be said about how
I thought
like
they're
you could.
adults. Thank you.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
I think there's a lot to be said about like the lifestyle of miners who have there's a lot of movement for these people who are at the mines for a day and then go home and then this and that and that. And a lot of miners they come back to Chile after shift, so they'll be
To
like,
Santiago
oh yeah, to Santiago after
or
shift.
to wherever they live.
Yeah, and so it's like they're up there for 3 weeks, and then a lot of them live in Santiago, and they come back and they take planes. So
Yeah.
imagine if they could take the train.
Right. Yeah. But the question the question still is, would it be enough to justify train operation? You
Right.
know?
No, I
That's
mean,
the
I don't
thing,
know.
because
I'm just saying, like,
because
let's
if you talk in
consider.
terms of like population density as such, like if you go up north, it's sparsely populated.
But there's
So-
also like the hope, the
Yeah,
desire
of
that
course.
it contributes to the decentralization, right? Which is what we talked about
yes.
earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Fair
that's
point.
like, yeah, we're planning on this, but hopefully because we have these trains, we can now decentralize things as well.
Yeah. I mean, but for the status quo right now, you have very sparsely populated areas up there in the north.
Oh,
And
okay.
in terms of cargo, might also not be viable because like a lot of the mining companies already have their own ports and railway operations going on there. So that's also something you have to take into consideration. Now, a lot of articles that I've read, they've made the case that it's more viable to expand a cargo train network towards the south, as you have a lot more densely populated areas in there, such as Talca, Chillán, Concepción, and even Temuco. And in terms of passenger trains, some experts argue that it might be more viable to expand mid-range trains like the Biotren in the Concepción area or the Merval in the Valparaíso area, and let them slowly grow together, as well as focused on direct long-distance connection between centers of high population density, which would allow, for example, highways to be cleared, especially during the weekends. And this is also why the Santiago Valparaíso train project is so much in favor, because 52% of Chile's population, or as you just said, Pinguino 70 something, live in these areas and generate, from what information gleaned, more than 62% of the GDP. So those are densely populated areas that you wanna have connected, and where it's really worth it. But it might also, I know it's not about profitability all the time, but you have to cover the cost of operation. And if you have
But covering the cost of
three
operation
people
again
living
is
down
not
there,
is not the same thing as profitability. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Profitability is a great thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
yeah,
But
yeah, I think you can, yeah, but right. So I think you understood my point, right? Okay. So that's one thing. We don't have the same population density as it is the case, for example, in Europe or in Japan.
No,
or whatever.
yeah, you're right. Though, again, another point, even though we don't have the population density, we have, because of the density of I don't think this at all, goes against what you're saying. I'm just pointing things out. Because we have the densely populated the fact that all of the businesses are here, as we said before, there are so many people that are traveling from Kyoto, from Viña, from Limache, from Agoroba, and it's again still central. So many of those people are going to be wanting to use the train every single day. Sell their cars for $5 billion, and then take the train every day.
But that was the other point that this guy was making, because you're talking about like the central region here,
Right.
like Kyoto, Limache, whatever. This is all fifth region, and they say, okay, look,
They're more
we have
focused
a
on
mid-range.
how do we benefit to the outer regions.
No, but what they're saying is like you got mid-range train networks already, like the Merval in Valparaíso, which also connects, I think, Limache. I don't know if Limache is in there, but it's like it covers big parts of the fifth region. There's the Biotren down there in Concepción, which is also like a I don't want to say sprawling network, but it's a network of train stops. It's like it's between long distance and metro, if you will,
Yeah.
And then say, okay, focus on that, expand that, like connect the region, and then basically you have population centers like Santiago, Concepcion,
Uh-huh.
and then you have like single lines. You can basically see it's like a network. You get like networks there that are just like a neural network that are
Sure.
connected among each other over long distances. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think this is like kind of the idea that they were putting forward. All right, so another challenge here is administration, which was really hard to wrap my head around. Now, the AFA has been called out for being extremely inefficient because of its complicated structure. Like the approval process for the AFA takes longer than with other institutions because it has to be reviewed by more offices than other state agencies. I do not know why that is, but apparently they have like the special standing and they don't get funds granted as easily as other state offices for some reason. On average, they said it can take more than 5 years for a project to go from the initial planning to starting works. And look, case in point, it took them 15 years just to come up with a feasibility study of the line connecting Santiago with Batuco, which is now in the works. But they started with this whole thing 15 years ago. And of course, the EFA has been notoriously underfunded, has been for the last 50 years actually. So much so that it actually issued bonds on the New York Stock Exchange over $500 million and opened a credit line with the World Bank for up to $800 million.
Jesus.
Yeah, so like they had to resort to that. Added to that in 2020, due to the pandemic, they had a 53% drop in passengers, which translated to a 45% drop in revenue. And to compare, between 1994 and 2019, the Ministry of Public Works funneled more than 18 billion US dollars into the hands of the concessionaires of the urban highways through subsidies to minimize the risk of investment. Remember, those are private companies. They're still receiving subsidies on the note of 18 billion US dollars. On the other hand, the EFA has only received so far as a little more than 2 billion US dollars, like merely 13% of what the highway operators received, which is ridiculous, you know?
Right.
And added to that, it was only in 2011 when the state started paying EFA subsidies again that they were cut off from in 1980. Now, like the EFA, what it has to do, it has to go to ask for money for anything it wants to do, and this is after requesting the money to finance its own operations. So they're just like, hey, we kind of need to pay our guys here. Can we have some money? They have to basically go begging for that every time.
Sure.
It's just not really like they got complicated operations. And of course they are, because of this dependency on the political apparatus, so to speak, they are subject to political pressures.
Sure.
You know? And this has been criticized because in the past, funds that were meant for the development of the cargo train network were redirected to the development of passenger train networks and small-time patchwork fixes that have a better look politically and were therefore prioritized over tackling larger projects. And this was made possible in part also because the AFA is not only the operator of the railway network, but also the regulator, which clearly, causes a conflict of interest here. Because they go like, okay, how do I put this? Like, it's kind of making we got a saying in German, you're making the goat the gardener. They're basically kind of like, they're
What?
overseeing this. It's kind of like if you try to oversee yourself.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're going to be
Honor
like,
system.
yeah, in a way, because they're operating this whole thing, but they're also in charge of the regulation.
Sure.
So kind of like they kind of tweak the regulation in a way that falls more in line with the way that the operation would look them better, make them look better.
Make them look better.
Yeah. So this is kind of how it works. This has been a complicated thing to wrap my head around, but
Yeah.
which kind of goes to show that the whole administration thing is
Yeah.
it's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Along with this, of course, there is corruption.
Yeah, of course.
Of course,
Here we
because
go.
and not only the AFA but the sector as a whole. Also which was exemplified by the case of the railroad line between Santiago and Valparaiso, as proposed by the TVS, Tren
Yeah.
Valparaiso-Santiago. The original amount budgeted for this project was $1.6 billion. These days, it's around $2.4 billion. But back in 2016, a study commissioned by the AFA came to the conclusion that the total cost would be around $3.1 billion. So they knew from the start this was going to be more expensive, but the private companies were just like, it's just going to be $1.6 billion. And then a couple of years later, they were like, it's kind of double now.
That is very common here.
Yeah, and considering the inflation and the current global situation, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be a lot more in the end.
I mean, that is, I have, like I said, I glean things, learn things because of my job teaching people who work in different industries. So many projects, like the people in Chile are like, oh, it's going to cost X, and then it ends up being double, triple, quadruple that. And that's why there's a lot of like half-finished skyscrapers you see here.
Yeah.
It's because there's like the initial cost, oh, it's going to cost this much to, I mean, there's even more now because of the pandemic. But before that, there's like the initial estimated cost, and then they ended up being like, oh, no, it's this. And then whoever had like paid it is like, no, you're in violation of your contract. And then they just sit there half done for like 3 years, and somebody else comes and buys it. And so, like, there's a building right across from where me and Mal live that has been under construction for a million years.
Okay, now with this project, the TVS, that was actually it's not a state project; it's a private project. It was also, funded from private investment.
Sure.
So, like, I wasn't really clear on why they would like deflate the numbers in the beginning, but I assume that there is a certain state subsidy considered, or maybe the company counts on the fact that the government will not leave such a project abandoned when it's halfway through, and the costs are going overboard. So I guess maybe that was the reasoning behind just lowballing this whole project from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Because you can't tell me that they didn't know it was going to be more.
I mean,
it's
hard to tell. Hard to tell.
And also, talking about politics, there's a conflict of interest to be addressed since since Juan Eduardo Errázuriz is, or should I rather say was, not only the president. Oh no, hold on. Juan Eduardo Errázuriz is not only the president of Sicto Coppers, which is the company that is behind the TVS project.
Okay.
Or one of the companies, but he's also the uncle of the now ex-director of the FAA, Pedro Pablo Errázuriz.
Pedro Pablo, that is a name. Peter Paul.
Peter Paul. That was his uncle, and
yeah,
you can see where there's a conflict of interest there.
Again, this is so Chilean. I'm hoping that we're turning the corner of this nepotism because Boric was like, I refuse to hire anybody that I'm related to.
Yeah. Well, actually,
which was it's the first president that's done that. So.
Right. Actually, the end of May, which was actually after I took all these notes, the Pedro Pablo Errázuriz was replaced by Eric Martin. Now the whole thing has a new president. So there's that. Curiously, though, recently the guy Pedro Pablo Errázuriz, he has become rather outspoken against this project, the Santiago-Valparaíso line. I do not know why that would be. Maybe it was because he wanted to distance himself from allegations of corruption. I have no idea, because that was a little weird. Because you could make the argument that he has a stake in this whole thing. But, that's just...
Who knows?
That's just me assuming things.
I mean, yeah.
All right.
I'm hoping that, like, I don't know what else you have. Wait, do you have more?
Yeah, I got one more big point.
Okay.
Which is politics.
Jesus.
Because the current Chile on Rails project, which is something that Piñera kicked off, is an 8-year plan.
Is to get the Carabineros to stop doing rails before... No. I had to. I was like, we've been saying rails too many times. We mean not to make a cocaine joke.
All right, so it's an 8-year plan. So that means that at least 2, if not 3 governments have to keep their shit together, plan long term, and don't give in under political pressure, which might not be easy because the expansion of the railroad network has been under fire by the powerful truck drivers union.
But didn't you say that Piñera was one of the first people to like be really behind certain rails and getting the private companies to invest in a railway system?
Oh yeah. But still, what I'm saying is just like this is a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And different political sectors have to basically support this whole thing.
Yeah, I guess that was just putting that out there to say like we have both right-wing and left-wing politicians who are very important in Chile that are already both in support of this. So maybe that if we have, we go from left to right, the way maybe our next president will be right-wing, maybe, I don't know, that this will continue to move along because honestly, I think everybody's tired of the fucking trucker shit. Like, I really think people are like, I'm tired of your shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's too much.
And that's what I'm saying. This is not going to be easy because probably for as long as this project is still under development, it's going to be under fire from the truck drivers union, you know. And their president, Sergio Perez, said that the development of the railroad is, and I quote, unfair competition financed with the
Unfair
taxpayers'
competition.
money.
Aren't they super
and,
behind free market?
And that they
Okay.
don't want privileged treatment, just an even playing field, which is extremely
is
cynical because
They would have an even playing field, but they would only get 30, like you said earlier, they would only get 30% of the products taken from them. So it's not even an even playing field. It's like,
I don't know about 30%, but 30%.
didn't
but
you say
okay.
that like 30%, you could transport 30%
yeah.
more product than what is being transported normally now?
Yeah, you
Isn't
would
that what
reduce this by 30%, but like this doesn't mean, well, oh god, yeah, I gotta have.
Yeah, but I guess my interpretation of that, maybe that's wrong, is that you would still need the truckers very much.
I mean, you will still need the truckers for the last mile at least, you know? You
Yeah.
can say, okay, let's focus on long distance by train, and then basically mid-distance you can... We're talking about these intermodal stations, where
Sure.
you would basically transfer the goods from trains to trucks. But, of course, the truckers will lose importance in the scope of things. And this is why he's being basically...
Yeah,
the
well,
truckers
you don't get essential political power as a trucker. That's called what you do as a politician. Like,
well, they have it right now.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
but
of course
but
they
his
don't wanna let
argument
go.
his argument is not
No.
about political power. His argument is about like how useful they are, and they're going to lose their jobs or
Well,
whatever.
no, his argument is actually, and this is the funny thing about it, is his argument is that like, we want an even playing field, you know? It was like, we don't want to be privileged and something like that, which is extremely
Right.
cynical, because you got to consider the tax breaks that the truck drivers have been enjoying since the Pinochet regime. Okay, let me just do a little dive because...
Me and the truckers, we're going to brawl.
First, besides the... Okay, we got to understand for that first, besides the sales tax, there's also a fuel tax on gasoline and diesel, right?
Sure.
Now, the sales tax is the same, 90%, and the fuel tax on gasoline is 6 UTM per cubic meter, and only 1.5
Cubic
UTM.
meter.
Yeah, and only 1.5 UTM, so just a fourth per cubic meter on diesel. So, which means that diesel is just
Math.
only a fourth of the tax on diesel is only a fourth of the tax on regular gasoline, which is extremely low compared to the OECD average. This, of course, benefits the truck drivers since most, if not all, trucks are diesel powered. Now, but wait, there's more.
But
Be-
wait,
be-
there's more.
because-
If you buy a Swiffer.
Because at the end of the day, they get 80% of this fuel tax reimbursed. In effect, this means that as far as the fuel tax is concerned, truck drivers only pay 5% in taxes of what regular Joe pays. A study from 2018 showed the total of these reimbursements are about $80 million per year, which is, if you want a comparison, twice the Teletón goal in 2021. And there's also like a less obvious subsidy resulting from this imbalance in some of the operational costs, because one of the biggest line items are the highway tolls, of course, you know, what they
Right.
have to pay. And while the costs for the highway maintenance is caused by trucks are about 90 times higher, 90, than caused by a regular car, the tolls for a truck, of course, are not 90 times higher than those for a regular car.
Sure.
You know, they don't have to pay 90 times more.
The truckers or the trucking companies.
Yeah, exactly. So you could make the argument that we're all subsidizing the trucks by paying for a nice chunk of damage that the trucks caused in the first place. You know.
Yeah.
So there's that. So basically,
Gosh darn it, you truck drivers.
Right.
And here's the thing. I want anyone listening from the U.S. to realize I'm not anti-truck drivers as a concept. My best friends are truck drivers. No. No, like, I understand, like, truck drivers in, like, the U.S. and other countries is a completely different story. I understand, and actually, in the U.S., it's a completely different story where truck drivers need to be making more money than what they're making. So I just want to make it clear that this is a case of Chile. If you are a truck driver, we're not, and you're from the U.S. or whatever, or even just from Chile. Like, you can be a truck driver and be, like, a total innocent person being like, I'm just trying to do my job, bro. I'm not trying to be an asshole. Hey, like, that's great. And actually, we shouldn't be clumping all # not all truck drivers together. But there is
Fair.
a problem with this industry. So, yeah, there's
Yeah, no, but I mean, it was just very cynical, the argument that he was making about, I want a level playing field. I don't want, like, you know, things to be, I don't want to be competing with a privileged train industry. He was like, buddy, you're paying a lot less in tax. You get reimbursement, you get tax breaks, like you pay proportionally less on highway tolls. Like, what more privileges do you want? Like, we should actually be taking this away from you. If you want a level playing field, you need to give up those tax breaks. So there's that. And of course, trucks won't disappear from the supply chain because while the train is more profitable for long distances, trucks are still needed for mid-range distance transports and the last mile. Which is why in the planning of the new railroad expansion there has been a special emphasis on what I said, intermodal stations, meaning hubs where the cargo can be easily transferred from boat to train or from train to truck. Some argue that we might even need more trucks because the train will be able to move more cargo, hence there will be a lot more, we will depend a lot more on trucks to distribute their respective routes. Which
I don't really understand that.
no, some argue that we might even need more trucks because the train will be able to move more cargo. So
and once it arrives at its destination,
we need more trucks to
right?
distribute
But
this whole thing on the respective routes. But I don't think that's a good argument.
Quote unquote trucks we might need, but we might not necessarily. They won't have the same power because it's not. It's like, okay, so let's say this train arrives in, I don't know, Lampa, right? Which it won't, but like it arrives in Lampa.
Never. Lampa's never gonna get a train. Sorry, Lampa.
A truck driver goes to the train station to pick up more supplies than maybe it would have originally, but that truck is not going to have the power to cut off a highway. So maybe we need more trucks, more workers driving trucks, but it won't be like the same.
Yeah, it doesn't
power
hold the
structure.
same political power,
Right.
but
Okay.
they're trying to assuage like the fears that they have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You're not going to disappear. We're going to might even need
Yeah,
more
you
of
might
you.
need more truckers.
Personally, I don't think that's a good argument because it assumes that it will be also accompanied by immediate economic growth. So it's kind of like, yeah, I don't think we need more truckers, but we will find a place for you. That is true. And also, let's not forget about the long-distance bus companies like Tourbus and the highway concessionaries who also have skin in the game. So there's going to be a lot of, fighting against that.
And we'll bring all of those updates to you
as
it develops.
Bottom line here, we talked about the reasons why we need a train. We talked about the challenges. So bottom line will be,
controversy.
Yes, we do need trains, but we need to be smart about it. We possibly need to prioritize the cargo network so that the passenger network doesn't depend that much on subsidies. But be prepared for this to be something that will a red budget item and not a black one.
Right.
And to minimize that effect, make use of the current infrastructure, focus on high population density areas for the expansion of the mid-range networks, and focus on interconnectivity with other means of transport, but also across large distances in order to connect the metropolitan areas with each other. Lastly, the politics needs to get their shit together, even draw up a body of legislature that clearly defines purpose and goal the national railroad network so that administrative processes are simplified and more streamlined and better funded.
Look at you.
Thank you for my TED. This was my TED Talk. Thank
Welcome
you for
to my
paying
TED Talk. I mean,
attention.
really, that's honestly, like, I know that was a lot of information, but
so much information.
Dang, Lenny, thank you so much for bringing all of that information and consolidating it because we're doing this in English, but you can't find all of that consolidation in Spanish either. So, like, I have to say, you should totally join our Patreon because we do a lot of work, especially Lenny, the nerd himself, like does, a lot of work on that.
Lately.
a lot of work on that, the political pool. And that's, so if you want to support him, then you should join our Patreon. Also, you'll just get lots of benefits too. And we also have one more event before we leave that we needed to talk about that we forgot to talk about.
Yes, sir.
There's actually the Chile Today podcast and the Chistolas are hosting a brunch. It's going to be at the Black Rock, and they're going to have a special brunch menu. It's going to be on July 16th, and the idea is just to get a lot of people together who just like want to hang out real casual like and brunch it up.
Yep.
And we'll bring you more information as that develops for as far as time and then the menu.
Right, and I think the root idea of this whole thing, I mean, we discussed this internally before, it was if you are new to this country and you want to meet people who have been around
around the town,
know stuff, hey, that's why we're making this thing. That's why we're hosting this thing. Like, come here, ask us questions, ask us anything you want to know about Chile.
Do you have suggestions for podcast episodes? Do you want to do stand-up comedy? Do you want to figure out do you want to practice your English? Like, do you want to practice your Spanish? Like, any of those kinds of things, we're open. If it's not your vibe, like, get a drink and then leave. Like, it's really low pressure. So we hope to see you there. That's going to be mid-July. And check out all our other events we already mentioned. They'll be on our page. And anything else?
No.
Okay, well, thank you guys for listening, and when in doubt,
Rain go out. The Chile Today podcast is hosted by Leonard Kluge and Bethany Francis and produced by Diego Pinguino Rivera. For more information on the news topics you heard today, check out chiletoday.cl.